Your alternative talk radio contact. The Planet. KGRAradio.com.
With infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Test, test.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello! It worked. I called the Sean Forker account, so that would be why.
No, I didn't know there was one. Fantastic.
There actually is, yes. It has your picture on it and everything. Someone is impersonating you.
It's probably me impersonating myself years ago.
We've all done that. Back in the good old days. Thanks for doing this.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having us. Having me, anyhow.
Yeah, Vance is a whore. He's been on here quite a few times, so.
Yeah, I am. Ooh. I'm a regular on first.
Yeah, he waddles around with his pants around his ankles, so he's been on here before.
I just told Sean I'm doing something I haven't done in probably 15, 20 years. I'm having a tumbler of whiskey.
But which one did you get?
Which one? What did I get?
The
I
whiskey.
got it for free.
What kind of whiskey?
It was given to me in a corporate buyout when corporation bought us out. Seagram's.
Seagram's?
I don't know my whiskey at all. I don't, but it's been at location for 25 years, and it was 10 years aged by the time we got it. So, yeah. It's
Should taste extra smooth.
It is. I will say I'm not an alcoholic connoisseur by any means, but it is super smooth.
An alcoholic connoisseur.
Having a tumbler of it. It's like, this is part of my recovery program after this weekend. So
hanging out with me.
Mm-hmm. You and Bake. I mean, everybody needs kind of the Bake 101, but there's no, like I was telling Vance when we started the other call, I said there's not really an easy way to explain how Bake is. You just kind of have to meet him, and then he's amazing, and he makes you laugh every 3 seconds, and then you're like, oh, that's how Bake is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think Vance got that full throttle, didn't you? Big V.
It didn't hit me until our last night there when we were in the hotel room, and then all hell broke loose. I mean,
I'm not a troll.
We hurt so bad from laughing. It was very painful, but it was all worth it.
I started drinking at noon.
Yeah, that's
only right.
Way before all you guys. But Baker got it into the moonshine, and
oh boy.
By the end of the night, he was walking straight, which he... Vance, you remember that? Holy shit, I can walk straight.
He pulled a Nicolas Cage full on leaving Las Vegas. He's like, look, if I don't have a fifth right now, I'm going to actually be more screwed up. So give me that booze. I love it.
It was a great time. You were missed, Shannon. You
Thank
really were.
you. I wish I could have been there. It was slightly painful to see all the pictures, as it is sometimes when these events go down and you're not there, but I was certainly there in spirit, and I was looking at the shots of where the vendor tables are and thinking of sitting there with the Far Giorgios and the Pug Army, all those years ago with you, Sean, and the Crypto Fam. So
I will say that our last night there, we were doing our goodbyes. We were sitting poolside out back of the hotel. It's an outdoor pool, and the lights in the pool were on. It was too cold to go swimming, but we all sat around the table, and I just kind of leaned over because Eric was sitting next to me, And just look at Eric, and I'm like, you have any idea how much Shannon adores you? And he almost fell off his chair. He's like, are you kidding me? I'm like, no, not at all. She loves your stuff, and she loves who you are.
Yeah, they're two incredible people.
Both of them.
Yeah, he and Carrie, right? And we've always bonded over the pugs, but they're just some of the nicest people I have ever met. And I'm just going to be sad to... if I have to miss another year, and I don't want to, I want to be there next year with everybody.
You cannot miss 2020, so.
I know.
It's a big year.
It's a year out, and
Now, before I do the intros, because we need to do that properly for you two, did anybody jump into the damn Ohio River this year? I know it didn't happen since when I was there, but anything like that go on?
Nothing crazy.
Okay.
No, but we did a tribute video. Actually, Bake did a tribute video to the tragedy.
I did see that.
And, okay.
To the donut, not the tragedy, to the donut.
It was to the donut.
Yeah, it and should
6
we
years
bring
later,
up
he's still pissed.
his he should as well he should be. I commented, I said, the lines were so long for those damn food trucks. I mean, it would have been a good distraction to thin out the lines, but that never did happen. So it did us no favors. Anyone that has seen you guys' and by the way, God damn me, I haven't even done an intro, let alone even mention your names. This is Vance Nesbitt and Sean Forker, which, again, I will do a proper intro in a moment, but if anyone has seen your pictures or the videos, because you even did a live feed from there, where did Baker get those glasses? Did he find them from an old lady and say, look, I know I would look better in those, which he looks amazing, but where did he get those?
A dollar store.
Yeah.
He got them at the Dollar Tree.
Mm-hmm.
They fit him so well, though, because it's Baker.
Yeah, we got in early, so we hit a couple of venues to go, actually a couple of stores, looking for a place to have breakfast, and Bake's like, oh, dollar store. And there's a whole reason why he wanted to go to the dollar store, which, I can give you a brief description why.
It's a great story.
Jeff Thomas was doing a speaking engagement at the theater, so Bake is going to go into the dollar store and buy a pack of children's underwear so that he could throw them up on stage while Jeff was. Well, and of course, Forker's like, you can't do that, please. You can't do that.
I mean, he could.
That's a little too creepy. But
could.
You can't
ended
do
up buying.
Yeah.
And he ended up buying ascots instead. So
they were stylish.
That was
yes.
They were very stylish. But he saw these elderly women's glasses, and he's like, "No, I like them. They're goggles. They're not women's glasses." And Forker's like, "We got to make a man of you." Yes, they are women. We just gave him hell all week.
He looked more like the. Well, it's not the statue. It's more the man that's in the suit walking around as Mothman. He matched the eyeballs of that creature walking around, that version of Mothman. Pretty
close. Nobody gave him a second look anyway with those glasses on. Now, back in PA, they probably would, but not at Mothman, they wouldn't.
No, there's all kinds of people in interesting outfits, and let's face it, it's kind of a place where, how I always say on this show, I have my freak flag, my badge on my shoulder proudly, and I fly the flag proudly, and it's where everybody's doing the same thing in the same place for an entire weekend, and it's incredible.
That's most definitely the case. Yeah. Absolutely. Some interesting people watching that weekend.
It is a very friendly venue. And I think I started to put some of the pieces together as to why it's such a friendly venue, because it's Mothman. And Mothman represents every entity in cryptid that's land-based. You have a 7-foot-tall creature, which represents your Sasquatch. You got glowing red eyes, which can represent both Sasquatch and extraterrestrial. You have the owl effect, which is extraterrestrial. You have a winged creature, which represents pterosaurs and thunderbirds and the Jersey Devil. It's an all-encompassing cryptid, and I think that's probably why so many people like Mothman itself. And so when people show up to the festival, it's very embracing, and it's a very friendly venue, as opposed to separate venues that might just separate out, and then there's division over Bigfoot, or there's division over Chupacabra, or whatever one specific. But I think Mothman is just representative of land-based cryptids and entities. It's a shadow. You really can't make out details of what it is, which represents, shadow being. And it's kind of how Cthulhu is with, the water-based cryptid. It kind of encompasses all the scary creatures that swim beneath the sea. So that's my take on it, and I think that's why Mothman is such a friendly venue.
High five on that explanation. I've never thought about it like that.
It's just my take.
So before we get any further, because I could easily just dive right into all the stuff that we have to talk about and that you guys want to cover tonight, but let me do a proper intro, which I normally do about 10 minutes into my show. Everyone's like, well, who the hell are you talking to, woman? So, and also, Sean Forker, and all of you know Vance on ITF pretty well. I mean, he's been on before. He and Jennifer Ann have been on before. They're both of the Caravan of Lore. He's been on Insider episodes. He's a big part of the group and all of that. Sean Forker, though, came on with me, and he doesn't do a lot of shows, but he came on with me back when I was on Sasquatch Chronicles, and I did my own show called Show Notes with Shannon, and it was kind of the culmination of it's like the after show kind of a thing, and it was a live show, and he did me the great honor of coming on with me. He didn't give a lot of interviews. I still don't think that he does, and here he is again with us this evening. So, first of all, thank you so much, Sean. And if you guys don't know of Sean Forker, you sure as hell should, because he started podcasting, what is it, 05 or 06, Sean? When was that?
2005. It's been a long time.
2005. So he started podcasting when I think a lot of us weren't even starting to listen to or knew what the hell a podcast was. What was that very first show that you started, Sean? And then what were some of the other shows that you have done since that people may have heard of?
Oh, you're testing my memory. I did the Sasquatch Experience with Henry May back in 2005. That was a show just solely dedicated to Bigfoot, and there weren't a whole lot of shows back then. I think there might have been 2 or 3 of them at the time, Shannon, when we started that. And then I wanted to branch out more into a little bit of everything. So with my good friend and my mentor, Eric Altman, we started Beyond the Edge Radio. That one's still ongoing till today. So that was from 2006 on. And then Arcane Radio with Lon Strickler. Vance and I got together on The Existence of Strange Things on Radio Memphis. And then, of course, we just launched SuperNRML, which we have a lot of fun doing. I have to tell you, I've had a lot of partners over the years in radio. Vance is by far one of my favorite. I also did the Nocturnal Journal with Tony Merkel and Dave Groves and Maz Adams for just a few episodes before we all decided to do something a little different. So it's been a long time, Shannon. I've done a lot of shows. I've produced a lot of shows behind the scenes too, but I've been doing it a long time. Like you said, 05. So it's been many, many years.
Yeah, and SuperNRML NRML is out now. And as Sean mentioned, Vance is his partner in crime for that show. And Vance, I mean, what's the state of, what's going on with the Caravan of Lore? A lot of people know you from that show. Are you guys still working on that? Or, what other projects are you involved with besides SuperNRML?
Currently, right now, I've kind of handed the crown to Lady Ann over at the Caravan of Lore. It gives me a little bit more time to focus on this project with SuperNRML and the Stranger Than Fiction news. However, I still will, be part of the Caravan of Lore. That'll never go away. But the Caravan of Lore is now based on the Fringe FM. So you can listen to the show over there. And I'll do episodes, from time to time. But right now, I'm more focused with SuperNRML and the Stranger Than Fiction news, which is also based on the Fringe FM as well. So that's our current value. And you say partner in crime. Forker commits the crime. I just cover it up.
I mean, that's what any good friend would do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more mischievous than I let on, right, Vance? You experienced that firsthand.
Well, when I got off the airplane and you greeted me, you're much taller than I thought.
Yeah, no, 7'2".
He towers over me. I was shocked. This venue at Mothman is the first time that I met Sean face to face and Baker face to face, which it was like old home week. Is like we've been hanging out for years. So
absolutely,
to be face to face is one thing, but it was just an everyday occurrence anyway. It was just like we already had our introductions out of the way. It was just nice to be able to physically walk and do things together. And it was a privilege, that's for sure.
Sean, is that little cafe still there on the corner? Remember that place that was the only place open in the morning to get any kind of a breakfast food or coffee?
Yeah, the coffee grinder is still open.
Wow.
And Shannon, the lines were ridiculous to get into that place throughout the day. You had to hit it in the early morning or you weren't going to get in there unless you waited, what, Vance? You waited 30 minutes to get iced teas at one point?
Oh, gosh.
I waited 30 minutes behind Mrs. Doubtfire and bringing up Mrs. Doubtfire. For some reason, when we got because we got in Thursday night and we started our hellos, and we were doing our Miss Doubtfire, and of course, Forker turns the TV on and Miss Doubtfire's on
That's
TV.
weird,
so
isn't
it
it?
was just theme of the entire weekend. So I'm standing in line waiting to get our iced teas, and there's this girl that's standing in front of me, and she's got a dress on, and I'm waiting in line, and they come down the line to take your order, and it was about a half hour wait because yes, it is very busy there. And I just happened to be looking down towards the floor out of boredom, waiting in line, and wow, the legs were just hairier than Mrs. Doubtfire's. I'm like, what is this woman having? I don't know, issues with Mr. Gillette or something that she's going to protest? I have no idea, but I kind of stepped back a few paces. I'm like, let's leave a gap in this line here.
You're not really into that so much?
No, it just kind of hit me off guard. I mean, if that's, what some people are, that's fine. It just, I don't know. It's not attractive, at least not to me. Maybe to a bus driver that thinks that, ooh, that's pretty exotic.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Natural, just the way God made you.
We apologize to all bus drivers that may be listening.
Well, that's a reference from Mrs. Doubtfire.
Of course,
the
of
bus
course.
driver. No insult to bus drivers.
No, of course not. Unless you see the same bus driver twice in the span of a couple of minutes,
Oh,
right,
God.
Vance?
Please, I drove past there again today, Shannon,
Did
and
you?
every time I go past there, I go past there probably at least once a week is minimum.
And you think about
Every
it
time
every
I
time,
go
right?
past there, my eyes are peeled, and
Yeah.
I'm looking and I'm waiting. It just
Like a grape.
yeah.
Peeled like
pretty
a
much.
grape, baby. Yeah, if anybody didn't catch that, Vance was on for Don't Ask Me the Number. I should have looked it up prior to, I'm sorry.
All right.
But it was named
yeah.
Time Slippin' and the MOD. So he told about a very interesting, well, we didn't know what else to really label it. Time slips, a glitch in the Matrix. We didn't really quite have a label for it, did we? But very cool experience that he had. So go back and listen. What about... Now, forgive me, everyone. They're rolling their eyes because they're like, let's get to some creepy stories. But I want to know, was there food trucks there?
Oh yes.
Tons.
There was food galore, and a lot of it was actually amazing food. So yeah, there's plenty of food to be had and plenty of drink to be had. It was at one point that, and it kind of slides off base a little bit, but we did have dinner at the Mexican restaurant that you and Forker ate at.
Yep.
And the food was pretty darn good. Interesting experience.
Rio Bravo.
Mm-hmm.
Rio Bravo.
That place was good.
Right.
Now, I just remember
Rio
the
Bravo.
food truck lines being, you kind of wish you had some kind of a mace or something. You could just kind of squirt ahead of you and clear the line out a bit, but not get yourself to where you would have to also leave the line, because the lines were spectacularly long the year that I was there. But all the food was so insane, you're like, it's worth it. It was like 45 minutes later, you're like, it's worth it, because you're just kind of, Mothman is basically walking around. You've got food in your hand, maybe a drink in your hand, and you're talking with your friends, meeting new friends, or, whatever the case may be there. You may have a table, you may not. You're wandering around, and you're waiting for certain speakers to go into the theater and do their presentation. So let's touch on that. Who did you guys see? Who were you? Who maybe had you not ever seen speak that you were surprised by? And Vance, I know you got up on stage and introduced Oh my God, his name just
Jeff
fell in my
Thomas.
head. Jeff, yes. That was very cool. How did
Thanks.
Did you
Thanks,
just
Sean.
get hoodwinked into that, or what happened there? I saw the picture. I'm like, what in the world?
Yeah, no, that was Sean's doing.
Oh,
Thank you.
Very nice, John. Yeah. So who did you guys see? Like, what kind of speakers what were the subjects covered, and who had you seen for the first time that you were blown away by?
Actually, Jeff Thomas's presentation was so entertaining. It really was very entertaining, and it wasn't wrapped around Mothman at all. It was just his personal experience and a video that he made about doing National Geographic episode and all the crazy nuances that happened going into that whole process. But it was very entertaining video that he made, and that's what Jeff does. He makes videos. He doesn't really promote so much about himself as the researcher, but he the video thing is his business. But in the theater, being that it's closed up for an entire year and they opened the doors, it was mildew stink really bad in that theater. It was horrible. So it was really tough for the audience to muster through a lot of the speakers in there. Now they had all the doors open and running the fans overnight. So the following day was a little bit better, but I felt so bad for, Seth Breedlove, because the Terror in the Skies and Momo debut was on Friday night, and that's when they had just opened the door. So it was really particularly Mothman smell in the theater. So it was tough. I mean, there was a wonderful turnout of people. Seth was kind of shocked. I was kind of shocked too. And a lot of people stuck it out. I don't know how many are suffering lung infections as of today. Hopefully nobody. But it was an interesting turnout. But with the smell of the theater, Sean was asked to do the introduction of Jeff, and Sean's just like, I can't do it. I can hardly breathe in here because Sean was doing the whatever. You were doing the graphics up on the big screen for him. So I'm sitting in the front row.
Graphics.
Right. And I'm sitting in the front row, and I just get a wad of paper handed to me and say, here, read this as an introduction. I'm like, wait, what?
So,
you're
Shannon,
going to do it.
Let me tell you, I was sitting there running the AV for Jeff because he asked me to. And Vance, you can tell him, I had a napkin loaded with muscle rub over my mouth and nose. So I wasn't gagging to death over the smell. It was terrible because not only did I have the mildew smell, but the airflow of the porta potties coming around the corner. And at me as well. And I don't know how Jeff did the presentation because I could bear it. And I said, hey, you know what? Vance's got a great voice, so let's go with Vance. Here you go, buddy. And he did.
Well, high five. I know. I remember sitting in the front row of that theater when Lyle Blackburn was up giving his Lizard Man talk. And I was in the front row, right-hand side, where all of the cords, extension cords, and everything that needed to be ran electrically was sitting there in kind of a pile. I do remember it was exquisitely warm in there and a little humid, so probably maybe a little smelly as well. I don't really remember that quite as much, but I do remember having this almost like an electrical burning smell, and I thought, I am going to look for the exits kind of quickly. I swear to God, I mean, God bless the place. It's a classic historic building, but my goodness, I swear to God, I was like, I think this all might actually just catch on fire. But it didn't. It was fine. But yeah, a question, why wouldn't they just, try to air it out a day or two before the big shindig?
And that was a question we all asked. We never really got a definitive answer on that. But, it is what it is. It's in the past
to the
now,
nuance.
but, it does. It did add to the Mothman sound. And we did find out, I believe, a day later that the basement was completely flooded.
Oh,
that didn't help any either. Yeah, so a lot of that was wafting up from the basement as well.
You gotta love
being in that theater, and I don't mean to change the subject, but it's kind of relative to the theater. For people that are unfamiliar with Point Pleasant and the Silver Bridge collapse, I'm sure most listeners are familiar with the story. But the theater sits right there at the roadway that took you up onto the Silver Bridge. And I could only imagine, because when that bridge went down, it was showtime. So there must have been people in the theater at the time that bridge went down. And you're talking only a matter from the back of the theater to the Silver Bridge going up over the Ohio River is probably less than 100 feet. So I'm sure the noise in the theater was absolutely insane. And either people watching a movie and there hopefully it was an action adventure movie go, wow, the sense around is great in this place.
Right.
Not having a clue or felt like an earthquake. One of the two, and I'm sure it ensued panic, but that's what I'm thinking about while I was sitting in the theater going, and the bridge was right outside the door of the theater.
I have a question for you both, because we talk about the food trucks and, some of the drama that might happen between some people or whatever may go on and the camaraderie. But is there still the realization of what actually happened there and the reason that everyone is gathered there? This supposed harbinger of doom was seen for this period of time, and there was investigations, and people actually did die on that night. So is that still something that is actually remembered when people get together at Mothman, do you think?
For me, yes. But I'm kind of the newcomer into Point Pleasant. I've been through West Virginia many times, but I've never been into Point Pleasant. So being there, yes, I absorbed all that in personally. And probably for people that are visiting there for the first time may go through that experience too, if they know the history, besides, there's a festival here. And if they understand why there's a festival, because I was asked that question today, well, why is there this festival celebrating this creature that brought death to so many people? And I'm like, it's kind of a memorial also to remember those that lost their life there. And I did notice quite a number of people going to the mural. Point Pleasant has what's called a wall that surrounds the city that protects the city from floodwaters coming in to the city limits from the Ohio River when it does flood. And it's a flood wall. But on the flood wall, and it stands, maybe 12 feet tall, Sean? I think something like that. Tall. But at the street where the Silver Bridge, was at one point, they painted a mural on that wall of the Silver Bridge as if you were going to drive over it. And I noticed a lot of people walking over there and taking pictures and just taking a moment. And of course, I picked up a rock from there just so I could have it in the souvenir collection. So yeah, I think a lot of people do take the gravity of what happened there at one time, back in 1967. I think they do take the gravity of it, but then they go back to the festivities and the food truck and the fun and the whole glamour of the whole thing.
I mean, yeah, Sean, what do you think about that? Because I think out of a lot of the people that I know in all of this, you've gone to Mothman more times than I think a lot of us have. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's always something remembered?
I think it's part of the story, but I don't think they're both seen as equal. And what I mean by that is I think you have two very separate events. You have the Mothman sightings that start in 1966, that go to 1967. The bridge collapses, and that's it. But if you talk to the locals, I don't know if the locals actually think there's a connection to it. And I think when you see some of the artwork and the T-shirts and the posters and everything, that bridge is there. The Silver Bridge is ever present. But I don't think, and I could be speaking out of turn, that to the locals, that they are related events. And one thing I was cautious about, and Vance could attest to this, is when I'm talking about Mothman, I'm trying not to bring focus to the tragedy because I'm really interested in the story of the Mothman sightings and don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. We're walking around that town. We're visitors in their town, and you don't know who has been affected by that and who's still around. That there are people, those families that died in that tragedy, and they still live there. We went by that Bible store, Vance, and they had all like the main front page articles up on display in the window of this store. And that was a little touching to me. And yet right behind it is Mothman toys and everything else. So maybe I add a little bit more seriousness to it than I should. I'm just trying to be respectful of the people. But to me, it seems like they're treated as two separate events, though they, and you can't escape, the thought of wondering, is there a relation between the two? And we don't know, guys. We don't know.
All right. Well, culmination of Mothman question for each of you. What is your favorite part of the whole weekend?
I think for me, it's really getting to spend time with my friends in this place that has such a rich history of a strange event, right? But being able to go and see the speakers, I think being able to be part of Jeff's first speaking engagement at Mothman was pretty cool, and being able to help him through that. The exploding deer was pretty neat, though very traumatizing for the three of us.
What is the exploding deer? We can't glance over that now.
Well, make sure you start from the very beginning, Sean, because I'm a virgin to Point Pleasant. So we come in over the Green Bridge Friday morning. We come in off the Green Bridge, and the nice Google lady on our GPS is, welcome to West Virginia. And we're all happy and excited, and we get off the Green Bridge and we round the half clover leaf to get into Point Pleasant, and out comes a yearling right at the border of Point Pleasant, welcoming you into the city. And of course, the Green Bridge is a 4-lane highway. It's 2 lanes in each direction. And Sean is driving. I'm in the back seat. Bake's in the front seat. And I hear Sean go, "Oh, look at that." And this cute little Bambi yearling comes strolling out in our lane. We are in the right lane. And it comes strolling out into the right lane and crosses over. And the woman in the white Suburban next to us thought nothing of it at high speed. And I've never seen this before. I've seen roadkill, yes. But this vaporized this deer. None of the three of us have ever seen anything like this. It literally vaporized this deer. And I think, Sean, you kind of summed it up to, Sean couldn't talk. He was speechless. I was like, did we just witness this? Forget your Mothman. We just saw something more incredible, an exploding deer. And of course, we're not trying to make light of it. Okay, at least it ended quickly for the deer. Yeah. But I've never seen anything. And of course, Bake goes, "I had no idea there's a certain spot on a deer that if you hit it just right, it will explode."
If only hunters knew about that, they would make sure to avoid that spot, because then all the meat would be gone.
So we go back. What was it like? Well, the bumper came off the Suburban. After it hit
right
it,
but did she stop or slow down?
No.
Full speed ahead.
Kept going.
No F's given, huh?
Just kept on. No, not at all, and kept going. Well, we went back through there, to go back to our hotel, which is in Gallipolatopus.
Oh, that's where I stayed as well. Yeah, Gallipolatopus. Yep.
Yeah. So the road was all cleaned up, but the bumper was still laying there 3 days later, and the bumper's still laying there probably today. But the road was all cleaned up.
She probably kept driving out of sheer utter embarrassment, and hopefully I don't know.
It's not like it's her fault. It happens. There's roadkill on a daily basis, but
maybe she just honestly did not, because it seems like she didn't even tap on the brakes if it literally exploded.
No, as Bake said, "Oh, she just went right on past there like it was an ordinary Monday."
It could be.
She just continued going.
There's a lot of weird crap around there that goes down. So she's like, "Oh, hit another deer this morning. God damn it." It is another
And that was
Monday.
the attitude.
Yeah.
That was totally the attitude around it. But like Vance said, I couldn't talk. I was just stunned. Like, I've never seen this before in my life.
She calls her husband.
And I was
like, "Oh, I lost another bumper today, honey. I'm sorry." Sorry.
Well, that's what it was like. It was just another day for her. And I'm surprised we missed the tidal wave of blood and viscera, to be honest with you. I don't know how. Not a drop. On the Silver Bullet, man. Not a drop.
That's great. On Silver Bullet. I love it. That's kind of strange, isn't it? You guys had a bubble around.
It kind of got Baker's attention because our final night there, we go out to dinner at the Tuscan Inn Italian restaurant. And our waitress, Baker brings it up. "We saw an exploding deer." And our waitress is like, "Oh, that happens here all the time." And Baker's jaw just hit the floor. He's like, "Wait, this happens all the time?" "Oh, yeah. No, this is normal." Okay, I guess this is just a normal thing that happens here in West Virginia.
They grow them special in double P, huh?
I guess so. Yeah, high explosive.
You guys live in wooded areas. You guys are from wooded areas. That I've never heard of such a thing, but okay. At least
never seen that before.
Yeah, double P grows them strange.
Yeah.
All right, let's
just one more strange encounter.
Oh, I mean, after what happened with that guy, jumping in, they fish him out, and he jumps back in and never came back up. I mean, that was nuts
And
that
Baker
year.
didn't get his donut. Yeah.
He
Poor
was
guy.
super unhappy about, Sans donut because of that, the guy that decided to swim twice in the Ohio River. Yeah, so, okay, well, let's... I love Bake. I know you're listening, Bake. I love you.
That's our boy.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Goggles and all. Old lady glasses and all. So, to switch gears here just a little bit, and we're going to talk a lot about SuperNRML, but I wanted to get to a couple of things that kind of have to do with ITF and get you guys' opinions on some things that actually just happened within the last day. And it was very fortuitous because I was going to have you guys on. I'm like, perfect, I will ask the boys. Now, first of all, let's go to a Dogman sighting that was called into the ITF hotline. And again, I'll remind everybody, it's not like you're calling my cell phone. I won't wake and answer the phone and curse you out because you're waking me in the middle of the night. This is just a voicemail line. You can call it any time of day or night, 7 days a week. You have like 5 minutes. And then if you get cut off, call back and pick up where you left off. And I will edit all it together very pretty for air. Call as many times as you need. The number is 877-317-9111. So let's go ahead and play that call from John, and then we'll have a little discussion about it. All right, here we go, guys.
Hello, Shannon. My name's John, and I'd like to tell my sort of, I guess, Dogman story. It happened on December 28th, 1993 at about 2 o'clock in the morning in Sweetwater, Texas. My college girlfriend and I were driving home from winter break early because we both had to work, and we worked in bars, so we liked to drive late, and we were going through Sweetwater, like I said, at about 2 o'clock, and we both noticed this thing walking down the sidewalk, and the street lights were on, and there were shops lit up, so you could clearly see what it was, and it looked like a big 6-foot-plus Doberman walking on its hind legs. It didn't look like other reports that I've heard where people describe it looking like a wolf or Anubis head with a human body. It didn't look like that at all. It looked like a big, giant, black Doberman walking on 2 legs. And I didn't see a tail, and the legs weren't backwards, like some people say. They were bent, kind of like a dog's legs would bend when they stand on their hind legs. But this thing was huge. And we saw it for just a few seconds, and it turned and looked at us while it was walking. And we kept going. We didn't stop. We talked about it a little bit after we saw it and just how creepy it was and how creepy it made us feel like it was evil. And we pretty much didn't talk about it after that. We had plenty of other weird things happen to us later on that year to kind of keep us from even thinking about that incident. But that's it. That was my sighting. It lasted maybe 10 seconds. And like I said, it was different than other ones that I've heard. Maybe, hopefully that'll help somebody, and maybe somebody else has seen something similar. So anyway, love the show, and thanks for hearing it. Bye.
All right, guys. So his sighting actually wasn't that brief. I mean, he's kind of going, it was like 10 seconds, which if you count it out, it's kind of a long time, guys. He does say it does not have backward legs. It was massive. He said it was just absolutely huge. And he does mention something that is actually very common with the Dogman, because apparently they're big a-holes. He got the evil feeling that a lot of people get with these things. So what did you guys think about John's call?
Well, first off, I see something like that, I probably just end up driving off a cliff. I can only imagine, and putting myself in those shoes, in that description, and of course it did happen some years ago, but the way he described it is, a Doberman walking upright it's just, there's something creepy about that altogether. And this whole Dogman thing had me thinking for a period of time. Sean and myself did an episode at the SuperNRML of hybrids, and through science, we can manipulate a DNA strand of human stem cells and implant that into a pig in order for those two different entities to embrace with each other and grow human organs. And these are experiments that are ongoing right now through China and Japan. So if you remove one segment of DNA that will allow that to happen, who's to say that our big hairy friend, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, whatever you might want to call it, maybe is absent of that one piece of information in the DNA strand, and you have a cold winter night and Squatch is looking at a female wolf as, you know, a little companionship on a warm night. If that's how a Dogman is to come to be, and of course this is just my speculation, I'm not saying this is where the Dogman comes from, but it's possible. Anything's possible. But then you would have least or Squatch intelligence, and then you have a creature with instinct intelligence, and that would be confusing. And that probably would make these things just the terrorists of cryptids, just mean and evil. And when he's describing watching this thing walking down the sidewalk, and it turned and looked at them as it's rolling down that's chilling, hair raising, and I don't think I would ever sleep again.
How about you, Sean?
Well, you know, I think listening to him tell the story, he's very matter of fact about what he saw. He's very certain. And I think how he tells the story, it lends a lot of credence to, the validity of it. There's no real embellishment, no over-emotional parts of it.
Right.
If we take it on face value. But when he gets a little deeper into the descriptions and how the creepy feeling and the evil feeling he got from that, has been said, that's very common in these sightings. And there's been a lot of them up here in my area, where Lon Strickler and Butch Witkowski and those guys have really been diving deep into the Dogman sightings. One of the things Butch always, makes, reference to when he feels these cases are very, very real, and that is that evil feeling. And I don't know if we can even guess to what they are. My feeling about them is that there's something that is maybe natural to our world, but unnatural inside the animal kingdom. And maybe it's something a little bit more ancient than we might be prepared to deal with. It may predate, some levels of humanity. So it's a very interesting entity. And the fact that it's still, that was in 1993, he saw this thing. And now, in the 2000s and later, we're getting a lot more sightings of these. It just makes you scratch your head and wonder what the heck they are and where are they coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And Sean, out your way, didn't they dub that the lichen loop?
The lichen loop, yeah. And, I'm not much for dubbing shapes and geographic areas and giving them names, but, you have to, I guess, for the sake of identification, come up with these, catchy names. Mm-hmm. But a lot of these sightings have happened inside this lichen loop, and a lot of commonalities come, through them from sightings, the physical descriptions on these sightings. The hawk leg, I think, is, where he's talking about the legs weren't bent backwards. His descriptor match a lot of what we see up here, sans the Doberman head. That's really weird to me, but it's a very interesting sighting. I wish he would have seen more of it and maybe found a way to interact with it a little bit more. 10 seconds, like you said, is a long time to observe this. It really is. When you think about how quick it takes today to pull out your phone and take a picture, you could do that within 10 seconds.
Yeah.
You can't do that. And let's say most Bigfoot sightings, you don't have that opportunity in most cases.
Yeah, these things, they just don't care if you see them a lot of the time. And they'll hang out, and sometimes it seems like the human has to leave first because it doesn't give a damn.
It intimidates. A lot of reports that I've read, it has a very intimidating presence in itself, but in some cases, it's actually chased people out of locations. Vance, you and I were fortunate enough to talk to a lady over the weekend just briefly about her sighting in Pennsylvania, and the level of fear she had. That feeling kind of matches up with what we're hearing from John in there in that story.
And this is something recent that happened to her?
I don't know how recent it was, actually. I can't remember, but she was talking to us about it, and it's just a very compelling sighting. Again, she stumbles upon an area and has this weird sensation, and they have this sighting of this creature, and they don't stick around very long enough to, really interact with it. They just hightail it out of there.
It is interesting that the side of us that is still somehow just enough in touch with the primal fear, that will usually hit before the person sees one of these creatures.
Absolutely. And I've said that to Vance and other researchers. I do a lot of Bigfoot research, so you have to pardon my, reference back to that. But, I've always wondered how long we've actually interacted with these beings in our, terms of humanity, how long humans have been, today been walking the planet. Are those feelings, passed down genetically? Like, are we genetically, through experience, prone to react to these things based upon an experience ancestors had years ago? That's just where my thought process goes with this, because somehow these sightings affect us in such an emotional, profound way that it's almost instinctual that we have that feeling and those reactions to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to agree with you, Sean, and I think it's probably because it's the human experience for thousands of years is the human experience that we are the only biped.
Hey, Vance, we're losing you a little bit there, buddy.
Oh.
It's getting real crackly there. Sorry.
It's the whiskey.
Chippy.
Yeah.
It might be.
It's not the phone at all.
He's drowning.
Vance, you're getting blurry. Are you cloaking? Don't cloak now.
Is this any better?
No, actually, that's actually worse.
Oh.
It rubs a lotion on
I
its
don't know what
skin.
happened there. Well,
You
continue
are
on without
going
me.
in and out of phases of the earth.
Oh.
We'll get you back, Vance. You're
Yeah.
coming back now.
Okay.
That's better. Okay, continue what you're saying. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm terribly sorry. No, I guess just for the human experience for thousands of years that we are known as the only biped on this planet. So when you see another creature that's a biped, I think that's a shock to the system and probably a shock to the DNA itself.
Yeah, the Dogman is, for the most
probably
part,
brings forth a lot of terror.
yeah, I think it's on the no list. There's so many negative aspects to a lot of these sightings, to where a lot of us are searching and we'd love to see this or that, but some of these stories, you're kind of going, I don't know that I would want to go back out in the woods and camp again. And I like to go camping, I don't want things to get screwed up with my liking to go camping.
I feel like if I experienced one of these, I would probably never go in the woods again.
Yeah.
Like whatever this being is, it's just got an aura about it that is no bueno to me.
All of a sudden, Sean's packing up the family, and he's like, I'm moving to Vegas. Coming out.
No more woods.
No
We're
more
done.
woods. I was like, hey, you want to go to Mount Charleston? Let's take the kids sledding. We can all go sledding. Sean's like, nope, I don't want to see another damn tree ever. I mean, that's how I feel that a lot of these experiences are. Sheerly, purely terrifying and life-changing. And seeing a Bigfoot is life-changing enough, but we don't hear most of the time that someone thought that they were in mortal danger and they got this aura of evil. Like the aura word is a good one that you brought up there, Sean. I think that is something I would say is in, 85%, 80% of these Dogman stories is this feeling of pure evil coming off of the creature.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, so...
Yep.
Again, kind of sticking with ITF stuff here really quickly before we jump into SuperNRML. In the Into the Fray Insider group, when you join Insider, there's a secret. It's a top secret Facebook group. We're special. Jeremy of the Deviatus podcast, and I think I heard him saying he was going to come back with that. I hope that he does. He was on episode 59 of Into the Fray, where he discussed basically many different experiences, including driving to work. So he's wide awake, driving to work, and seeing massive shadow figures sitting on top of roofs, which was such a unique experience to me. I had never heard of anything like that before. But he posted in the Insider group something has been going on in his house, or many kind of different somethings. And he gave me permission to share, and I wanted to read what has gone on. Actually, we're recording this on the 25th, Wednesday. It happened just this morning, 1 a.m., and this is what Jeremy says. A noise woke me up in the middle of the night. It sounded like a click or a tap, and was loud enough for me to assume my wife had possibly gotten out of bed. I was lying on my left side, facing the bathroom when I heard it. I opened my eyes and could see a woman in the doorway, heading into the bathroom, facing away from me, but she was rocking side to side in the doorway. I wasn't sure if she was trying to find a light or if perhaps she was confused, so I called out my wife's name, and she answered with a huh from behind me in bed. She was sleeping through all of this. I turned over to face her just to confirm with my eyes that she was in bed, then turned back around to look at the person in our bathroom, hoping it was my daughter. I didn't have my glasses on, but she was gone. Excuse me. I got up and went to check on my daughter, and she was, in fact, asleep in her room with the door closed. I did end up returning and walking toward our bathroom in the dark, but it felt cold about 3 feet from the door, and I experienced chills all over my body with the feeling of fear. This was one of the few times I felt afraid in my home. I went back to my nightstand to grab my phone for some light before going into the bathroom. Nobody was there, and by now, my wife was awake and asking what I was doing shining a light in the bathroom. I explained what had happened, and she said I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to fall asleep. And she said, "You better not leave me alone." And he says it takes him about 90 minutes to fall asleep after that. And he did go on to say that, I won't read the whole thing, but about a month ago, he was in the bathroom looking in the mirror, and behind him, he saw a woman walk into their bedroom. Long black hair, like very, very detailed. So he's got all these things going on in his home, which I always say is such a no-no for these things to do. Stay the hell out of people's houses. But the thing that he posted about was, had anyone heard of an apparition, an entity, whatever you want to label it, doing this rocking side-to-side motion? And we've all heard that, like you said, Sean, going back to Bigfoot stuff. But as far as apparitions, I can't really recall anything off the top of my head. I'm sure if I Googled something, but usually the memory bank is a little bit better than that if something has come across it a few times, which means it hasn't. Have you guys heard of anything doing that?
Not particularly. I mean, similar with the old hag, but not swinging back and forth like that. That's kind of creepy within itself.
That's bad.
Mm-hmm.
No, nor have I. This is interesting to me. And, we have talked off and on for some time, Jeremy, and I advised him to get some cameras a couple months ago because he was having some interesting things happen. I don't know if he's done that, but I'm interested to know if this stuff happens during daytime as well, or if it's just conducive to the early morning time he has, in the home. Like, does any other time of day, does he have any of this experiences going on? I'd want to sit down and look at the whole story before I was able to kind of make any guesses of what's going on. But it sounds like he's got something going on there, and I wouldn't mess around with it too much. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, the one that I mentioned that was from a month ago, where he saw the woman with the dark hair. In fact, he said she had dark hair that was covering her face. Oh my good God, no! That was so that was a month ago, August 27th. That was 5:45 a.m. So, somebody's on fire over there.
Oh, that's the driveway alarm.
Oh.
Spooky.
Someone's creeping up on you. Yeah.
What is it about us in here? Fire alarms with Corey?
Corey had something going on nuts that time we were trying to. It kept happening. He's like, no, we're good. Like 10 minutes later, it would just be blaring in our ears. He's like, call you back. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Tower in Inferno.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, but that's a really good point, Sean. Is this going on always kind of quote unquote around the witching hours, whatever people like to call it? But yeah, I don't know. I do think that I remember him saying that he did have some equipment, but I don't know if he ever put it in use. But as you said,
Gotcha.
if it's something really dark, which it seems it probably is that going to exacerbate it? You know, are you poking the bear there? A lot of times people say either you ignore it or you call it out and say, this is my house, leave me the hell alone.
I think you notice these things more in the early morning hours because, you know, you're trying to partake in other activities, you know, like sleep if you're a normal person. And, you know, you're a little bit more alerted to things going bump in the night at that point. Throughout the day, you're going on through the, you know, normal everyday hustle, and you're not as noticing these things going on around you. I would be very anxious to see if this does happen during the day, and if you just get this equipment out, how often it's actually happening, and maybe it's happening more throughout the day to day than it is in the early morning hours.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if sorry, Vance.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It is a very good point. It is camouflage during the day. There's so much activity, and I'm sure probably all of us experience that when you're up before the sun comes up in the morning, and you notice outside how quiet everything is. And then as the sun rises, you know, the earthly sounds of human activity, it increases the volume of traffic. You have the increase of activity, and it does get camouflaged. Doesn't mean it stops happening. But from my understanding from Jeremy, this stuff is following him because they moved. Mm-hmm. And he thought, oh, we're moving to a new house, you know, life will be good. And yet here all this stuff is still continuing, even though he's in a new location. And that is concerning. So is some of the stuff attaching to their property that they moved into this new house or whatever? I don't know. Maybe burn it all and start over. I'm not sure.
Well, that's difficult, though, because if you start talking about, you know, is it attached to a person? And how would you even find out such a thing? Like, what if your grandma's grandma did some black magic way back in the day? You know, how would you even know such a thing? That's what's crazy about some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly. Or like Pam says, you know, seeing the attachment of the beans on back of pea, and they don't have that awareness, but she could see it.
Oh, God.
And what if that's the same similar type of case? I know I keep going back to her episode just for that reason.
You know, Pam is one of those that I still to this day get a lot of correspondence about. Mm-hmm. She is definitely one of those guests because her stories are highly impactful, and the things that she can see that are unfortunately very normal for her are also very terrifying. She's not acting like it's something welcomed. So yeah,
right.
No, that's a very good reference.
And I worked with an individual not too long ago. He's since moved on to other employment, but for the amount of time that I worked with him, he kind of struggled with looking healthy, and he was a young guy. But he said to me one day, he started asking me questions about paranormal things and do I believe in it? Because he didn't know my history of what I do. And I told him, yes, I do. And he said, you know, I feel like there's something hanging on my back constantly. And Pam was the first thing that came. Yes, and Pam came to mind immediately. And I couldn't see anything. You know, I tried. I couldn't see it, but I might not be in tune to see it.
Makes you wonder
Pam might be able to.
If we
but
flew
for him
Pam
to
in
say
there.
that, yeah, it's just for him to say that, and he was looking for somebody that wouldn't ridicule him. And I told him, no, and I had a long discussion about paranormal things prior to him telling me that. But for him to say that, and he feels like something is hanging on him,
his back,
and he can't get rid of it. Yeah, so. I don't know. Maybe Jeremy has the same type of activity. Who knows? Who knows? And I should say also on Jeremy's behalf, he is starting a new show called The Storage Papers, where he's writing paranormal stories that he will broadcast, but they're fiction based. And he was doing that. He was doing that to kind of maybe separate himself from reality stories, and maybe that's what was bringing it in. But he is now focused on doing the show, The Storage Papers.
Well, I hope that helps. I mean, we've heard that before, you know, and I've said it to guests that I've had on, especially if they've never even shared the story and they might have stuff going on now and they don't talk about it much. And I'm always like, oh, I really hope this doesn't get things going. And they always kind of go, oh, I don't know. I mean, I hope not either, but it might. And it's never my goal, but it.
There's the possibility of creating this activity as you're writing it. You know, the Tulpa effect, creating these entities as you're, you're actually manifesting them through your own will, which is can't rule that out either in this case.
Yeah, if you're one of those people, and I'm certainly not. I'm more like a rock when it comes to that, which is a good thing. I mean, I wouldn't want to wake up and see, basically, what's her name? Started with an S from The Ring. Slunking around my bathroom. Screw that. I mean, who wants? I would never sleep again. Took him 90 minutes. It'd take me 90 years to go back to sleep. Bless his heart, but he's more used to this stuff, unfortunately, going on in his own home. All right, guys. Well, thank you for allowing me to get that out there. If any of you out there listening have heard of specifically the aspect of something, an apparition or entity swaying side to side, that's kind of what Jeremy was posting about originally in that Secret Insider group. So get a hold of me, Shannon, at thefrayradio.com, or through the website's contact page, and I'm sure Jeremy would be happy to get any feedback from that. So let's talk about you guys' new show. How many episodes are you in? What kind of things have you covered so far? And, what kind of things are you working on for the future for Supernormal?
Go ahead, Sean.
Well, we've talked about several things so far. Recently, we just did a show with John Johnson on what he believes he is now in possession of the original reel of the Patterson film. That was a very interesting conversation. I think Vance and I both left that conversation really geared into the thought process that yes, he has the reel. Vance, what do you think that's true? I don't want to speak for you.
No, but I believe, to put it in a percentage, I would give it about 98%.
Wow.
Yeah, about 98% that he does have the original reel. I still have a couple of questions that need to be answered technically first. And I know that Corey Likapoy was in the film industry, and he knows a lot about it too. We've had a couple of people that know a lot about film that have been corresponding. But this particular show really opened up, and again, Sean, I'm going to use that term, Pandora's box, because I like to open that box in just about every one of our episodes. But it really opened up the box for a lot of people to come in and discuss, the pros and cons of yes, he has it, or no, he doesn't have it. I think there's probably a 98%.
How did he say that he got this?
It was from an estate sale that he just by happenstance saw a post at, I believe, a local grocery store saying that this estate sale had old film and RC
planes.
What?
Right, and he said he went there to look for RC planes, and he is, in the film, he works with film, developing photography, etc. I'm struggling for the proper words in which he does, but he's been in this field for so long. But all the information as to where Patterson's attorney was holding on to this film because Patterson owed him money, and it seems like the lineage falls into the right place at the right time to this attorney that had this film container labeled Bluff Creek. And when he was at the estate sale, he saw that, and it stated Bluff Creek on there, and it was wax sealed, and he took his chance sight unseen. And of course, he said he opened the tin and they scrutinized it and put it on the table, and he paid somebody money to manipulate it, but it is in such deteriorated condition because, and it was revealed at the fact that yes, Patterson had the film developed, but on a day when known authorized Kodak developers were closed, and he had the film developed, which led it to believe that it was probably done out of house in more of a happenstance type of way where developing really wasn't done properly. And because it wasn't done properly, it started to deteriorate the film. It wasn't washed properly through all the chemical process and so on. So it started to deteriorate the film. But he can confirm that the footage is the same. But he did tell us, there's the images on there are the same images that we saw. He's looking for something that maybe we didn't see. However, John Johnson is a skeptic. He believes from day one that the Patterson-Gimlin film is a hoax. And, part of that was the discussion. Why does he think
Not
it's
shy
a hoax?
about it.
No, but we never really got too much of a definitive answer other than what Patricia Patterson, Roger Patterson's wife, what she said. And I think he really bases a lot of what she said, but none of us were there for that phone conversation. So we really don't know if she actually said it or not. If she did, that's one thing. If she didn't, well, that's another thing. So the mystery is still there.
Now, when he sees the tin and it says Bluff Creek, does he right away go, oh my God, does this have to do with Patty? Does he know right then before he even opens it? That's why he bought it?
Well, he suspected that's what it was, and he wasn't sure. He suspected. Now, mind you, there's two different films, and still, the first film reel that's still missing. Nobody really knows where that film reel is at all, and apparently it covers with the trackway that they had come across, and other nuances. Who knows what else might be on that film canister? But his thought process is that Roger Patterson, and he really did not include Bob Gimlin in on any of this conversation. This was strictly Roger Patterson setting up to do this film as a project, not so much to hoax, but to actually have somebody in costume and do this. And I think that's why he feels it's a hoax. My question is, you go into the woods, you're going into the prime real estate where a Sasquatch would be, and you're going to pull off a hoax. What happened if this thing just happened to walk out of the woods and they captured it on film?
Right.
And John Johnson's like, no. But he couldn't answer the question why he said no. He just let it go. Nope, it's a hoax. Okay, well, that's his opinion, and I respect that opinion. I totally respect that opinion. But the way the camera is so shaky at the very beginning of that film, it leads me to believe that they probably both crap themselves seeing this thing walking out. I'm not saying that's what happened, but I'm kind of leaning that way, that yes, there was a lot of shadiness in Roger Patterson's background. There truly was. And yes, he wanted to create this film, but I think they just, by happenstance, look, there's people that wanted to create a UFO movie, and sure enough, they see a UFO. And now people want to call it a hoax because they wanted to go out there and make a film about it, and here a UFO shows up. So things do happen.
At this part of the story, you have to realize Bob Gimlin's irrelevant after the taking of the film. He has nothing to do with the processing or any of that. So it's probably why we didn't talk a lot about Bob Gimlin. I'm not saying Bob Gimlin's irrelevant to the story. I'm saying to this particular point, Bob Gimlin's irrelevant to that part of it. And you have to look at that because Bob Gimlin stepped away from the field after having some issues with being paid properly. Bob Gimlin didn't come back into the Bigfoot field, I think, until like 2000. So there's a large period of time where Bob Gimlin is absent from this Bigfoot story. You know, from the moment that reel is taken and sent out, as I told you, Vance, as I told the listeners, that's a bigger mystery than the actual if there's a man in the suit, because we don't know what happened. And that leads us to the condition of the tape today, or the reel, if that's what it is. And it just, Shannon, there's so many little variables and little facts that go into this that make me think Johnson's got the real deal. So many little stories that add up that make sense to me.
So, I mean, how do you even preserve something that's already so degraded, or what's his next steps, if any, with that film? Nothing.
He made that very clear too.
Right.
It's not on the reel anymore. It is cut up into many different strips, put in acid-free envelopes. But because of the poor conditioning, it's probably going to disappear in the next couple of years, and not because someone's going to take it, just because it's going to degrade that poorly. It was not kept in great condition, one, from the processing, but two, in storage for so long. It was just so abused. It's virtually worthless, he said.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you guys wonder if the rest of that film will ever surface, or if it's, even in the hands of someone that knows what they have?
Well, I asked him. He said there's 24.82 feet of the Patterson film that we've seen. He said there were 28 feet of footage that he has possession of. But in that additional footage, it's nothing we haven't seen before. And that's what I'm confused about. Like, what is on that, like 3.8 feet or whatever, what's on that? That's a lot of frames that something else could be in. Now, he said it's nothing we haven't seen. I have to take his word for that because we're never going to see it. He made that specifically clear. We're never going to see it.
All right. And he is a skeptic. He is very much a skeptic that, this whole thing is a hoax and it's a fraud. So if there was something on the film that was going to let the cat out of the bag, that would have been for the first part of the conversation. So Absolutely. Clearly there's nothing on that film that revealed anything that we have not seen already. And he did state that the films that are out there that M.K. Davis worked on and has digitized is the best quality to see and to work with. But with the film that he has, he says it's off-site. No one will know where it came from. No one will ever touch it, see it, look at it, smell it, nothing. It's off-site, off storage, and that's it. It's out of sight, out of mind. Don't ever consider offering him $1 million for it because it's just going to be handed down to his heirs when he passes on, which is his choice. But the irony of the whole thing is, if this film is the real thing, it falls into the hand of a skeptic. What's the poetic justice than that? I don't know.
I think it's better off in his hands, to be honest. If transversely, if we were to say there was imagery on there that would have been shocking and would have changed many people's opinions on the film, we never would have seen it to begin with. I think it's better off in the hands of somebody who's so skeptical about it that if there was something damning on there, we would have all found out about it already. I think that's kind of the blessing in all this.
Now, this is coming from someone who owns it that is a skeptic. So in his mind, it's not a Bigfoot anyway, but this may have come up, and I'm just wondering, and this is an extreme Pandora's box and a hot button topic with a lot, but did the whole massacre and the blood pools and the this and the that were in fact talked about at one point in time, did that ever come up in this conversation with John?
It did. It did. And I don't know if it made the aired version of the episode or not, but
it did.
It did. John's saying it's just from developing. The coloration is from the poor developing, that there's no blood in the pool. It's just, what did he say? It was just retaining of the magenta or something?
Yeah, there's 4 color spectrums, which all printing in film is done in cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And the red portion of that color spectrum is, through poor developing, will actually start to bleed into a black and white film. And it'll make any water, that's just a highlight. And I am kind of familiar with that, at least in the printing end of the business. I am familiar with that. So yeah, that was just a processing error, because he was able to clean up off the digital imagery, is able to clean it up and bring all the color back, and everything matches perfecly.
And no blood.
It was
no blood.
No.
I think, and I'll say it, I think the problem we see with the grasping for straws from things is people that have spent too much time looking at the film. And when you start spending that much time, like MK devoted much, I don't want to take anything away from him. He devoted so much time to this. But I think you do go a little mad when you do dedicate so much of your time and yourself to the project. And I think that's what happened. I'm not putting him down because he spent a lot of time on it. I'm just saying, I told Vance, I get over-analysis paralysis. Like, I get to the point I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
But when you spend that much time looking at it, Shannon, frame by frame, and John even goes to say MK did the stabilization in the most difficult way possible. That frame by frame, he broke this down and did it. You will go mad. I mean, that's a certainty.
Absolutely.
You'll go insane.
No, he's incredible at what he does. I know that anytime somebody starts a thread about that, it's like, oh boy, it's going to be a long thread,
And I guess we jumped down that rabbit hole, Shannon, because it was so fresh. That's not the only thing we've talked about, but it was breaking news. It was a pretty big deal.
Right.
Yeah, because people are saying that's the missing portion of the film is her being basically gunned down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would, and again, if that was on there, and John has what he says he has, he would have told us.
Yeah.
I have no doubts about that. I don't have any doubts about John's credibility. And the reason I say this is because he was so forthright, and, you know, he didn't have to, he could have been the world's largest tool bag over this, but he was very nice and considerate to us, not to other people, but to us. And hence why there's so much left on the editing room floor, which I'll say in all honesty. But nonetheless, it was compelling news at the time. The offer was made to come to me. I put the offer to Vance and Maz and James to talk about it. We were all gung-ho, and I'm just kind of honored that John chose us. Now, I will say this, Bill Muntz has also been in touch with us. He was rabidly trying to get a hold of us because he wants to offer a viewpoint, and we have agreed to entertain him on that, to do a counterpoint.
Oh, that would be
just
awesome.
to keep it fair.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Bill
And we didn't
Muntz.
want to become that.
Well, no, but I think people would appreciate that very much. And it's not always the most comfortable place to be as the host of a show, whether you're in person or even over Skype or over the phone. Everybody wants to have everything be kosher and people get along, but that's not always the case. So, I mean, if you guys did that, people would appreciate it.
Yeah, we have a responsibility to tell the truth, the full truth, not just one side of it, not one person's version, the entire story, and let the listeners decide the truth for themselves. Vance and I decided we were going to do that when we started this show with the topics we were going to talk about. And it's not just Bigfoot, Shannon. We've talked about the reality of the Megalodon, Clinton Road, the terrors of Clinton Road.
Can we touch on that before we wrap up? Because I am not familiar with Clinton Road. Where is it? What's the deal with it? Why is it terrifying?
Well, it's in Passaic County, New Jersey, and it's a stretch of road where a tremendous amount of paranormal activity has taken place. There's a ghost boy that resides on a bridge. You throw a dime or a nickel down, it gets tossed back up at you. Phantom trucks that appear out of nowhere and chase you off the road. UFO sightings, Bigfoot sightings, encounters with the Ku Klux Klan and Satanists.
Oh, that's not good.
No, it's never good.
I'll take the ghost boy. Holy shiza, yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, my goodness.
Right. So this is a long stretch of road that has a history of significant event. And we kind of spent the show talking about it. There's a bunch of YouTubers out there that have gone out of their way to, kind of showcase what's happening out there. We're going to take a trip out that way to see if we can elicit any kind of the activity. But it was just a good story. As with everything we've talked about, extraterrestrials so far, dimensional creatures, hybrids, it's all a story. We're doing Point Pleasant this week just because we were there. And that's what we want to do. We want to talk about these things that, we may experience, Shannon, in everyday life, stories we've heard about. We want to examine them, get a viewpoint, discuss it. But at the end, we always leave it to the listener to decide what they feel. And we've been having a lot of fun with it too. We've added some games and some other things involved into the mix. So it's been a lot different than anything you've heard from me in the past. I think it's a little bit more editorial than it is interview based. Would you agree, Vance? It's a lot of us.
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. And for those people that we do talk to, and even that we don't talk to, and we're just sharing a story, Shannon, we all kind of have the same kind of mix and philosophy doing shows like this. Sean, myself, Maz, Baker, and you, Shannon, none of us judge anybody to say, oh, no, they're full of it. We don't. We listen to everybody's story with both ears wide open and accept what they are telling us without any judgment whatsoever. And then, like Sean said, we can take an opposing point of view and bring that forth also, because we're out here just for the truth. We don't call anybody out to say, hey, you're full of it, or start any kind of infighting whatsoever. That's not our philosophy. Our philosophy is, please share your story with us. We have an email. If you have some sort of crazy thing, fine, share it with us. We're not here to judge you. We're here to listen and maybe either send you down a pathway to get help or a good source to find a solution to the problem in which you are having, or we just sympathize with you and listen to your story. So, yeah, I do agree.
Absolutely.
Well, I cannot thank you guys enough for coming on basically at the same time that you're going to be airing, kind of a Mothman-based episode. So I appreciate that so much. And like I said, Sean doesn't do a whole lot of these. So thank you so much, Sean, for agreeing to come on with Vance and I. I mean, I knew Vance would come on. He'll come on in the middle of his sleep with me for Into the Fray. He's been on a few times. No, I love you, Vance. You know that I do. So, okay. I mean, bottom line, let's let everybody know not only where they can find Supernormal across all platforms, but each of you as well.
Well, you can find me at my name, at Sean Forker. I'm my name everywhere, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I stand behind me. You can find Supernormal. That one gets a little bit more complicated, at SuperNRML on Twitter, SuperNormalCast on Facebook and Instagram, and go to our website, SuperNRML.com.
And you can find me right here in Studio 401 if you want to come over and have a cup of coffee or a first-time glass of whiskey, whichever, or
whatever
on
kind it
Facebook, whatever kind it is, I don't care, but it was really good, and I might have a little more. Or you can find me on Facebook at Vance A. Nesbitt. And of course, you can send messenger to me over there if you like, or put a post up, or however you want to communicate, or on Instagram, Vance_Nesbitt_NRML. And I look forward to hearing from everybody. I like everybody.
Well,
Yeah,
no, I mean,
too.
don't push
Like
it. I mean, you don't have to
Well,
say
except,
that.
there's you, Shannon.
I mean,
without
you
mentioning
tolerate me. I mean, you like everybody? I don't. Let's not lie to the folks.
Yeah.
No, thank you guys so much. It's a wonderful little reunion.
No, thank
Absolutely.
you. We
This is
greatly
great.
appreciate it.
Well, I'm so-and-so. I was given this name by my parents. I've been to such and such a college. I've done these things in my profession. I produce a little biography. Buddha says, forget it. That's not true. That's some story. That's all gone. That's all past. I want to see the real you are now. Well, nobody knows who that is. Because we don't know ourselves except through listening to our echoes and consulting our memories. But then there's a real you, and that again leads us back to this question. Who are you? That is the real you. We shall see how they play with this exam by the koans to get you to come out of your shell and find out who you really are. That after your funeral, you will will suddenly become somebody different, living somewhere else. They will say reincarnation means this, that if you sitting here now are really convinced that you're the same person who walked in at the door half an hour ago, you're being reincarnated. If you are liberated, you understand that you're not. The past doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist. There is only the present. That's the only real you that there is. The Zen master Dogman put it this way. He said, the spring does not become the summer. First there is summer, and then there is spring. When you settle down in the train to read your newspaper and so on, you are not the same person who a little while ago left the platform. If you think you are linking your moments up in a chain. And this is what binds you to the wheel of birth and death. But when you know that every moment in which you are is the only moment, this comes into Zen. A master will say to somebody, get up and walk across the room. And he comes back and he says, where are your footprints? They've gone. So where are you? Who are you? When we are asked who we are, we usually give a kind of recitation of a history.